While the media and sports organizations often attempt to choose and over-promote the stars they want to be stars, some snatch their crowns themselves and put it on for the world to see anyway, regardless who gets the attention or not. And whether they give this guy the attention he deserves or not, Jon Jones is the best, and he delivered that message yet again loud and clear against a great guy and a great champion who, for the second time around, simply could not weather the storm that is Jon Jones. Jon Jones is special, and he's the truth. Similar to Anderson Silva, Jones can kick, he can strike, and he has impressive athleticism unparalleled. And so he beat Daniel Cormier. Joe Rogan briefly caught some flack for interviewing Cormier while still dazed, confused, and crying after the knockout. But being dazed because of a knockout was not really all that was going on there. There was instead a psychological paradigm that isn't often discussed. Anytime there is a gifted standout that claims an era, there are sometimes other great champions almost right there who thought it could have been their time to reign supreme, but unfortunately fall short to reality. Cormier was there to prove he was the real champion, even above the only man that ever beat him. A man people still considered the best while he was sidelined out of the sport, and while he was champion, he had a job to do. So it wasn't so much that Cormier was dazed. Daniel Cormier felt the sting of a psychological KO, a legacy shift, and he fell before the feet of Jon Jones and reality by way of humbling knockout.
Cormier once again sends Jones retreating.
He's just having a hard time reaching Jon. Oh, Jon down on that kick. He's hurt.
DC was stunned by that head kick. Jones trying to press the issue here. Cormier is down. Not out yet.
Cormier's in big trouble. And Jon is all over him.
Here comes Johnny Bones with the ground and pound. Cormier
That could be it.
trying to survive.
That's it. He's out. He's out.
Jon Jones has done it.
This happens when a dominant athlete seeks the throne of supremacy, but another athlete's destiny and ascension to greatness cannot be denied or stopped. Rogan mentioned that it's a lot like Ali Frazier, in that while Ali was out of the sport for a while, Frazier was rising through the ranks as an undefeated new champion on the rise. So the question arose, who was really the best? Ali was an undefeated boxing phenomenon. Then, right in his prime, he was taken out of boxing and was battling the United States. Ali started to become more of a cultural icon and an activist who was getting the entire world's attention because he was right and everyone knew it. Regardless, during his exile from boxing, Frazier was plowing through people, and he was the undefeated boxing champion at the top of the chain. After 3 years, when Ali's legal troubles began to clear up in his favor, rumors of a long-awaited showdown and back-and-forth debate about who was better began to excite the sports world. What we got were 3 legendary fights, all very close, but Ali, of course, won 2 of 3. And Ali was, of course, on his way to being considered the greatest of all time. Ali's greatness would be cemented in more events to come. During that time, which is largely considered the best and most competitive era of heavyweight boxing, once again, a new, then undefeated, seemingly unbeatable boxing legend threw his hat into the race. George Foreman. and Foreman banged his way through everyone. And then finally, down goes Frazier too, as Frazier fell to the new undefeated boxing monster. To the world's surprise, Ali, nearly Frazier's equal, would go on to defeat Foreman too in the spectacular Rumble in the Jungle. Standing alone, Ali was then the king. But here's the truth. The Jones-DC rivalry was only a delusion. Like DC even admitted, live on air himself, it's not much of a rivalry when Jones won both fights. DC is a beast and a hell of a champion, and a very likable athlete. But again, Jon Jones is the best. Cormier had a time in the sun when he pummeled through contenders in Jones's absence, and that made him think he had arrived and was supreme. But none of those guys were Jon Jones. Jones even had a disadvantage. I never like it when athletes come back from a layoff and go right into fighting a top-ranked contender or champion. It's not wise. Ronda did the same thing. Didn't work for her. It's best to have a tune-up first. Before jumping back in the ring and coming straight for Kovalev, Ward fought Alexander Brand first. A solid, respectable fighter, but at the twilight of his career, and not a major threat for Ward. Jones's disadvantage was that DC was still very active and sharp. With a series of victories, he had the wind at his back. Jones had the long layoff, and I didn't think DC should have been his first fight back. Still, Jones came in and showed that even though Cormier was dangerous, Jones just has too many tools and skill advantages at his disposal. His height and reach was used skillfully to keep Cormier from ever being too comfortable or relaxed. DC was forced to stay on his toes, wondering what was coming next, constantly thinking about how to get inside. DC started off very strong, but as the fight progressed, we saw that Jones was presenting one too many problems. Then, finally, DC got hit with something he didn't see. After the fight, DC was visibly in agony. He didn't even want to look at Jones, and he turned his back on him. I didn't think that was cool, and I debated this with the guy next to me while we were watching it live. Even Jon Jones saw the pain in Cormier, felt bad, and started to dish out compliments in respect to him as a champion. DC still did not want to commend the new champ, and was crying. Frank Mir publicly commented against his crying and checking out. But most people chose not to go in on him too much. Crying and turning his back was unsportsmanlike and not cool. But still, I was understanding what I was seeing. Not too many people faulted Cormier for crying either, because subconsciously we all sorta understood it too, and he was given a pass. For DC, Jon Jones was the last floor boss toward goathood, and it had just slipped through his hands. A lot of Eastern philosophy teaches us the dangers of wants or desires that cultivate expectation. Because sometimes it's what we crave or expect that sometimes subjugates people into a personal hell. An inability to let go and let be. When you want something and you don't get it psychologically, you have to be somewhat like water or the wind and adapt to outcomes outside of your control. Yes, you need to have goals and strive to achieve them, and you could focus on them to make them happen. You have to apply yourself to do your absolute best, meaning you put in the work and you train so that your best self, physically and mentally, shows up. Because you could be the best, but if your best gets beaten, there's nothing to be distraught about, and the result must be accepted. You just have to make certain your losses don't come because of lack of focus, lack of training, or unpreparedness. If you did your best, then it is what it is. Sometimes warriors of any field need to realize when you reach for the stars and land among the clouds, it's no small feat. Being a champion and one of the best in the entire world is rare, and it's something few people ever get to do. We should never let ourselves get to the point where the things we didn't do make us fail to see and appreciate the things we did do. Many people have dreams of fighting in the ring or the octagon, And Daniel Cormier is still at the very top of the field in the world. And he was a champion. No one can take that from him. Sometimes it's good to stop and smell the roses every once in a while. Never forget to enjoy the ride. But on that night, the agony of truth was kicked and punched into Cormier. And it hurt.
The words, "you're not the real champ," have been stinging him for a couple years now. He still knows that he did not beat Jon Jones, and Jon Jones is still out there. This is his opportunity. This is his moment. And this is his moment.